I have to tell you, if you want to hear a gospel singer, you have to hear Van. Truly, truly. He used to make the national convention, his singing at the national convention and his piano playing were the highlights of the national convention for me for years. So um, let me tell you a little bit about Van. Van Gilmer is a renowned soloist, composer, and director. He's the original organizer and director of the 80-member Baha'i Gospel Choir that made its debut appearing before a standing room only audience in the Ramada Hotel ballroom during a Second World Congress held in New York in 1992. Since then, he has directed several Baha'i choirs and interfaith choirs, including a 100-member international Baha'i choir that toured Western Europe in 2004. Van currently serves as the music director of the Baha'i Temple in Chicago and has appeared 3 times at Carnegie Hall. A Baha'i for over 56 years, Van has served in a variety of local and national Baha'i administrative body and has been involved in the civil rights and racial justice movement since 1963, where he sat in at the Woolworth lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. He's a member of several local Chicago area human rights organizations and currently serves on the Village of Wilmette Human Rights Relations Commission. Having said all that, that's quite a wonderful bio, Van. I'm delighted, I'm happy, I'm honored that you agreed to speak to us this evening. And ladies and gentlemen, here's Van Gilmer.
Well, it's wonderful to be here with you. I haven't done a fireside in I don't know when. I've done a number of kind of talks, but not a fireside as I remember them from 57, 58, 59 years ago. But I thought I would chat with you some. In fact, what we didn't do, Ajit, I do have a slide thing, and I need to share. If you'll let me.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make you, I'm going to get, where's Nabil?
Hey, Van, you're a co-host now.
Okay, you can share your slides.
All right. So let me see if we can get this going. Lord. I don't know what that is. Are we still together?
Yeah, we're together, and we see a rather large PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, let me see here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Perfect.
Hopefully you can see.
Yes.
We said when I did ask me what was the title of my talk, I said I don't really know. Let's say this new message. And so I'll go from that. I just need to move some of the stuff out of my way. All right, here we go. So the new message is the Bahai Faith, but the Bahai Faith is not, it's not that young. It's just one of the newest of the world's religions. And I thought as I was thinking about the Bahai Faith and how I happened to find it, it's just unbelievable to me that I did. It caught me by surprise. So I'll start off talking about Black world and me in America. Born and grew up in a segregated South. Now you all are in the South, but you weren't even in Texas. I never even thought about people that far away. I was thinking about all the southern states And of course, it was segregated there. And all my interaction was only with Americans of African descent. I followed in my family's footsteps and joined the church as a child. I was destined to be a Christian like my mother, my father, my grandparents. And we were Baptist and Methodist in my house. My father and mother belonged to the Baptist church. My grandmother, who's my father's mother, belonged to the Methodist church. So I went to both of those churches, but finally joined the Baptist church. I never met a white person my age until I graduated from college. That's not something that a lot of people can say. It was in this period when I sat at the lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. This is me right here. Oh, there's that's me. This actually is in 1963. And I had still not yet become a Baha'i. I didn't know anything about the Bahai Faith except I knew the word Baha'i. I put these in here because I want to tell you what then attracted me to the Bahai Faith. They talked about one God, and I always believed there was one God. I didn't know about this part, this one religion. I was having enough problems with trying to figure out whether I should join the Baptist church or the Methodist church, because I also sang at Trinity AME Zion Church, and I played for a Seventh-day Adventist church. But this is what I really loved. When I did discover the Bahai Faith and started looking at it and talking to the very few Baha'is in Greensboro, they were all generally white, mostly women, and mostly old. So I'm a young Black man. I was not attracted to old white women, except they were so nice. And that's what really kind of made me start thinking, why is it I'm demonstrating for racial justice in America? And here's a group that's actually doing it back there in the 60s and had been doing it since the early 1900s. And I'm just now finding out about them. For those of us who are Baha'is, you might be familiar with these words. I highlighted love because this comes from a message from the Universal House of Justice, which is the international body of Baha'is that is located in Israel. And they wrote this in 2019. They said the power to transform the world is affected by love. Love originating from the relationship with the divine. Love ablazed among the members of a community. Love ignited by the word of God is disseminated by enkindled souls through intimate conversations. Well, back in that time, I would not dare step into a white church, no matter what kind of church it was. I would only go to a Black church. But this is talking about intimate conversations. That would not be something I could have had then, that create new susceptibilities in human hearts, open minds to moral persuasion, and loosen the hold of biased norms and social systems so that they can gradually take a new form in keeping with the requirements of humanity's age of maturity. I did not see humanity maturing at all. As I mentioned, my world was all Black when I became a Baha'i. It says to the House of Justice says to all of us who are Baha'is, and they're really speaking to all of us, you are channels for this divine love. So it's got to come from us. Let it flow through you to all who cross your path. Infuse it into every neighborhood and social space. Move to build capacity. There can be no rest until the destined outcome is achieved. But now we got a long way to go, because we're talking about things that all of us are struggling with right now. We're at an age of maturity, and here in this message in 2019 to us said, you, talking to all of us who are Baha'is, but to everybody, are channels for this divine love. Now we got to think about whether or not we are actually acting as channels of this love. I wanted to concentrate on African Americans, because I've been a Baha'i for 56 years. And while the Bahai Faith is very inclusive, there's still just a few of us who are African American. The many references in the Baha'i writings about the power of solving the problem of racism. They say in the Baha'i writings is it's the most vital and challenging issue facing us. So that's another reason I wanted to concentrate on just kind of emphasizing African Americans in America. What are we doing? If you're white, or if you're white passing, what are you doing? So most vital and challenging issue forced into America by North Atlantic slave trade. I'm talking now about who African Americans are. There are a lot of people now in America who are Black, but who have come from Africa directly. I'm talking about those of us whose ancestors were brought to America over 400 years ago. And we've gone through Jim Crow, civil rights, and resolving racism leads to resolving all of the problems we have in America and the world. And I'll show you a quotation later that says that. This is what is our reality that we don't really like very much talking about. I was scared to death when I was a little boy. We just recently, I went to see the movie Till, and then I also went to see a play here in Chicago at the DeSaba Museum, which was about the trial of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was killed. He was from Chicago, and I'm sure everybody should know that name, but it was this lynching that preceded a lot of what we now see is just killing Black people. Like to the right, you know, that's George Floyd. But I'm having very lot of difficulty these days with seeing stuff like this happening now after 56 years, 60 years of my coming from segregation. This is what I learned when I was in school. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? And I said that every day. How about the quotation on the Statue of Liberty? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuge of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Our words have been beautiful, These are the words of people who call themselves American from the beginning of when they thought they discovered this country. Wow, we sang this all the time. My country, 'tis of the sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, and let freedom ring. So we've had lots of words. Some of them have come through scripture. Others have come through our leaders in our country. So how can we make a difference? We need to understand that there is a problem. And now people are even using religion as a way to say that people who are brown in America have no rights. I say we should all examine ourselves, find an action-oriented group. If you're Baha'i, make the writings of Baha'u'llah the action plan. Rely on your heart over your head. Don't try to think about it. Try to feel it so that we can really get into beginning to try to love one another, be a part of the solution, and be determined to do better. Now, that's just for everybody. Make these words come alive. These are scriptural words. Love one another as I have loved you, Christ said. O son of being, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. Let's think about that on a personal basis. Let's say I am talking to any one of you who are here tonight, and I'm saying, love me. If you love me, then I can love you. If you don't love me, my love can't get to you. Now, these words were God speaking to man, but we can take those and think about them as us. The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. And boy, do we look for justice these days. We hope that everything we do will be just. In the Bahai Faith, justice is it says the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Here's the promise in the Bahai Faith. For the accomplishment of unity between the colored and whites, and this was back in the day when Baha'u'llah and when his grandson and his great-grandson used these words, colored, those were what we were called in that time. And whites will be an assurance of the world's peace. Now, I'm at the end of my slides, so I'm going to chat with you a bit, and I'm going to stop sharing. And before I chat with you, I'm going to sing a song. And the song is one that I learned many years ago. Baha'i. And it tells the story of the Bahai Faith in about this much time. It was written by one of the few Black people who was Baha'i at the time when I became a Baha'i. Her name was Alice Earle, and then she became Rittenhouse, Alice Earle Rittenhouse. And she wrote this song, which made it so easy for me to then start thinking about who is Baha'u'llah. The song was entitled, Have You Heard of Baha'u'llah? 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 I've heard the glad tidings, and I will tell you of Baha'u'llah. Long ago, the people of all religions looked for a promised one to come, fulfilling all prophecy that all of humanity would learn to live in peace as one. Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? I've heard the glad tidings, and I will tell you of Baha'u'llah. The Bab was slain, his followers grew and spread the news of his coming far and wide. Among the believers, Mirza Hussein Ali, the blessed beauty God had sanctified. Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? I've heard the glad tidings, and I will tell you of Baha'u'llah. Hussein Ali proclaimed his great mission in the year of 1863. He said, I'm Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the Prince of Peace, the source of unity. Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? I've heard the glad tidings, and I will tell you of Baha'u'llah. His word went forth in tablets of power and love from Akka, the prison by the sea. He said there's no prison but the prison of self, and that his suffering would set men free. Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? Have you heard of Baha'u'llah? I've heard the glad tidings, and I will tell you of Baha'u'llah. Baha'is there are all over the world who live in service to all humanity. All sheep of one fold, as prophecy had foretold, how powerful Baha'u'llah can be. Now you've heard of Baha'u'llah. Now you've heard of Baha'u'llah. We'll spread the glad tidings and tell the people of Baha'u'llah. So it's a short song, had a lot in it. I kept asking, so who is Baha'u'llah? And how is he the messenger for this day? And the story became one that Baha'is refer to as progressive revelation, but that God has always spoken to man. We have never been left alone. And as soon, which is usually 500 to 1,000 years, as we start kind of doing our own thing, he says the very same spiritual teachings every time, but he adds to them. And I want to concentrate on race in America. I'm going to do that because that last quotation that I read, it says, if we could solve that, we will solve everything. And often we don't understand that because a person is brown, that we are all still sisters and brothers. And so Christ said, love thy neighbor as thyself. And I'll talk about Christ and Baha'u'llah more because most of the people in America became Christian. And then many people came here who were Jewish. But Christians were here. And so Christ did not say, love thy neighbor as thyself, whether he is or she is black, fat, ugly, tall. He just said, love thy neighbor as thyself. And at that time, most everybody was next door to somebody just like them. And look at how we live today in America. We're still very segregated. I went to my hometown, Greensboro, North Carolina, a few months ago, and I was surprised that when I went to Greensboro, the Black community is still the Black community. And you saw early the picture of me sitting at a lunch counter. That seemed like something simple. It was hard for us because if you did it, you were breaking the law. And if you did it, you were arrested. And we did it over and over again. It started with 4 Black graduated from, which is a historically Black college, North Carolina A&T State University. These 4 freshmen, 4 Black guys, got together and said, let's go downtown and sit down at that lunch counter. I don't know if I can even tell you what it was like that afternoon. About 3:30 or 4. I was a senior in high school. They were freshmen in A&T. And we heard, and 2 of them were from Greensboro, David Richmond and Ezel Blair. I knew these 2 guys. Couldn't believe that they went downtown, sat on a stool at a lunch counter because, and this was in 1960, February the 1st, 1960. And we had to keep doing it. When I graduated from high school, I went to A&T, and still we were going downtown. We were sitting at the lunch counter. You know, I could not even eat a McDonald's burger. I could not go to McDonald's. It just seems regular now. I could stop at most anywhere and get something. But at that time, I grew up now, and I'm 20, and I'd never been at a McDonald's. Those places were off limits. So it wasn't easy to sit down at the lunch counter. It was something, still water fountains with colored on one, white. So that's the way I came up. And jail was not a jail with bars, because there would be 300 or 400 students that they would have to arrest. And well, this was making me think about my life in a Black community in America. Growing up singing the Star-Spangled Banner, pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A lie. And we learned it. So it was from there, from this place in my life, that I was invited to sing at a Bahai Faith. A thing like this, except there weren't but 4 people there. It snowed that day. This is in North Carolina, in the South. And we don't go out when it snows. I don't know in Texas, I don't know if you have enough snow to keep you in or not. But if it snows in the South, everything stops. So the Bahais had their little meeting on this day, and it was snow. And I went through the snow up to the campus to go to this meeting in the library. And I only went to sing. I did not go to hear about the Bahai Faith. I heard about the Bahai Faith, but at that time, it didn't mean very much to me, because I was thinking about what I was going to sing. Well, they didn't even ask me to sing. And that's because the person who invited me forgot to tell them he had invited me to come to their meeting and sing. So the Baha'is were going to make this up to me, asking me to come to another fireside. And I asked a friend of mine if he would go with me. Some of you may know this friend. He's and he does some of these workshops all through the week. Anyway, the 2 of us were going, but we found out we had to go out into a white neighborhood, and that's go to anybody's house in a white neighborhood. So I wanted somebody to go with me, and we got to this house. The meeting started tonight. We started, there was a little song and some prayers, and they started talking to us, and we started asking questions, but that was it. But I'm going to skip way forward. What was going through my mind was this white couple with 2 little white children were not afraid of these 2 Black students coming in their house. We stayed. They kept inviting us back. We had a wonderful time. And I said, how is it all my life I've not been a friend to anybody white, and here are these white people that I don't know who are Baha'is, who are Baha'u'llah. And of course, I didn't immediately say, oh, well, I'm going to be a Baha'i. I thought I would never join. But the more I thought about my own life, I loved my Black Baptist church. I loved the music there. I loved knowing all the people. It was a packed church every Sunday. Great music, preaching. Was will any white people ever be able to go to that church? And I certainly wouldn't be going to any of the white churches in Greensboro. And how could the Bahais be doing this? And I thought, okay, so there was one God. He sends messengers. They come periodically. They all state the same spiritual teachings, but according to our understanding at the time they come. And I thought I would try it. I had no clue that I would remain in the Bahai Faith 56 years, 57 years. I never thought it. But I tell you what I'm realizing. I'm realizing that we have a very progressive message, which really calls upon us to love one another in ways other than a smile, in ways other than coming together for a meeting, because that's what Baha'u'llah said. I've already shown you the words. Learning to love, learning to be able to intimately have conversations with one another. Those are the requirements now. And the obstacle in America is first race, but there's a whole lot of other things. If you even appear like you're white, somehow you're white. If you appear like you're Black, you'll see the things that will happen to you. And I thought that by now, none of those things would happen to me, my family, or any people in my community. And so it's painful to watch George Floyd killed. It's painful to watch Black people killed. It's even more painful to watch Black people kill Black people, because America has taught us that power is more important. So I've said a whole lot of things. Why don't you, anybody?
May I add something? When
Yes.
there is approximately 10 people on YouTube watching us.
Okay.
So I know they are unable to ask questions. So
Yes.
if you are on YouTube, I'm going to give you my phone number, write it down. If you have a question, text it to me and I will read it out to Van Gilmer. The rest of you are free to ask Van any questions. My number is 281-788-0380. Let me repeat that, 281-788-0380. So please text me your questions, and the rest of you should be free to comment and ask Van any questions you wish to. Or you can type it into chat and I will read them to Van.
Let me something also from the Baha'i writings, but it's also about race by the son of Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, and he says these words: "If you desire with all your heart friendship with every race on earth, your thought spiritual and positive will spread. It will become the desire of others, growing stronger and stronger until it reaches the mind of all men." These words, "if you desire with all your heart friendship with every race on earth, your thought spiritual and positive will spread. It will become the desire of others, growing stronger and stronger until it reaches the minds of all men." That's just desire was the word. If you desire with all your heart friendship with every race on earth, your thoughts spiritual and positive will spread. It will become growing stronger, stronger until it reaches the mind of all men. Source, my friend, it's not so hard to do. You've got to find the source, my friend. It's all left up to you. Answer, a new day is coming soon. You've got to find the source, my friend. Don't be patronizing to me, my friend, and I'll try not to be suspicious of you. If you show me your genuine friendship, I'll try to warmly respond to you. There is an answer, a new day is coming soon. You've got to find the source, my friend. Get your hearts and minds in tune. Get your hearts and minds in tune. So, you want to have conversation, or?
Yes. First, I want to read you something. Becky LeBlanc says, thank Van for being so open and vulnerable in this forum. This has been a wonderful experience. Thank you. That's from Becky.
No,
Thank you,
thank you.
Becky.
I'll tell you while anybody's thinking. I am in this last few years in a place where I've been reflecting on how many years we've been really talking about and how we've been talking about we need to learn to love one another. see the things that are happening, to hear the things that are being said. It makes me think that all of us here need to figure out what more can we do. Shall I invite somebody over for dinner? Can I call somebody just to see if they're okay? But particularly if they're not like me. Because we have a tendency to be with the people who are most like us. And I'm trying to do that. When somebody does it to me. When somebody invites me to go somewhere. When somebody invites me, I'm feeling like maybe things are okay. I do see a hand. Jane, you have a hand?
Yes, I wanted to thank you for sharing such personal stories. When I grew up learning about things, I remember reading about the Little Rock Nine. And then when I had one of the gentlemen come speak to a group of several hundred kids, and he went into detail about sitting in a chair that had ground glass and peanut butter, and about how long it took for his family to get that out of his flesh. His mother was called saying, if you want to see your son, he's at the hospital. And then she'd get there and it was a lie. When you share the real story, rather than what has been sugar-coated somewhat or made more neutral in books, it helps, to me, it seems to help everyone understand better. So thank you for being very open on that. And I love what you just shared. I've been thinking a lot about how many homes I've been in with people that were different than I am. If you had not taken that step into that white neighborhood, we wouldn't have the bounty of being with you right now. And you were young when you went to that Fireside, when you went to that, and you didn't know what you were going to.
No.
So,
And you know, I'll say to you, my life has been very long, but I've been in Wilmette, Illinois, for the past 17 years, and it's the first time I have ever in a place where I don't see an African American. I go to the store, I won't see one. I walk up the street, I don't see one. And Wilmette, the village, talks about how might it become more inclusive. But it's an example, like many places in America, that were designed to be white and affluent. And so all through the North Shore of Chicago is 1% or less Black. 6 or 7% Hispanic. 13 to 14% Asian. Now, the other two groups have come to the country. Black people have been here all the while. Just 1%. Now, there are many communities that are all Black. You go to the south side of Chicago, it's all Black. The whole south side is Black. They call Chicago the most segregated city in the country, in all of America. So we're talking about coming together. We're talking about learning to love one another. We're talking about how we become as one. And the obstacle is that we're very divided. Even after all these years, we're still very divided. So how do we do that? And of course, the teachings are the Baha'i teachings are very specific about eliminating prejudices. In the song that I just sang, I used some of the words that came from our writings, from the writings of Shoghi Effendi. He says, white people who look like they're white and act like they're white, should get rid of this subconscious sense of superiority. Well, how would you know if you have a subconscious sense of superiority and you're with someone who is African American, and you're that person that sees it, but that person is not going to just tell you, you're acting like you're greater than me. You're acting like you know more than I do. The only way we can get to that point is to begin to know each other well and be able to help each other grow. I'm supposed to not be suspicious. I am. And I'm finding it out now. After all these years, I'm finding out how suspicious I am. And I surely haven't uncovered all of it. I see two hands now. So let's go, Becky and Amos.
Well, Becky, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I grew up in Inglewood, Colorado, and there was no one colored. And people of Spanish American descent were definitely ridiculed and belittled and called ugly names. Then my family moved to Slidell, and it was Slidell, Louisiana, when I was 16, and that was a shocker. But now I'm living in Houston, and God put me in a neighborhood that when I looked at the house, I saw people walking, and there was people of every color from every background. And as a Baha'i, I said, okay, this is wonderful. I want to live here. 7.5 years later, I'm finding that even though the neighborhood is extremely integrated, it's segregated in its integration. The Hispanic people only associate with Hispanic people. The white people only associate with white people. The Black people only associate with the Black people. Now, if we meet one another out on the street, there's pleasantries stated, but no intimate interaction. So Baha'u'llah put me in a position to build a patio in my front yard. And now people come and sit down and visit. And I'm interacting with people who are Black and people who are Hispanic. And the friendships, the openness that is starting to happen is slow, but it blesses my heart. As a white person who grew up with a very, very, very prejudiced father who was upper middle class white, it was very upper middle class privileged. I'm amazed at what I've had to learn about white privilege. And I believe that until those of us who are white, as the Bahai Faith teaches, until we get off our little white privileged thrones and start looking at what does the world look like through everyone else's eyes, I don't think we'll ever get rid of those subconscious actions and behaviors that we do without realizing it, that feed this offensive, horrible prejudiceness. And what I have done with the Black people that I have gotten the closest to, as I have said, what do I do that causes you pain? or that is offensive to you as a Black person, because I don't know what I'm doing if that's all I've ever seen, so that it looks correct. And it's been amazing. It's been Black women that I've had the courtesy to share that with, but it's been amazing what I've learned from these other women and listening to their stories, and the friendships have become deep and long-term. So I just think that we need to come out of our houses and into our front yards, not our backyards with the wooden fences and all the privacy. Come out into the front yard and open yourself up. And like Van did tonight, let's all be vulnerable. Let down the walls. And those of us who are white, don't be afraid to find out that we've been taught and educated wrong. Don't be afraid to learn that something that you've done all your life is offensive to our Black counterparts. Because unless we learn that, we're not ever going to know we do it. Therefore, we can't change it. Why is it that Van is sharing that where our national temple is all white? It's because there's things whites do that make Blacks afraid to be there. And we're doing them, even as Baha'is, we're doing them because we don't know any different. And even though we try to do it, even though we think that we're doing it because we're Baha'is, we've got to quit. That breaks my heart when I hear that the Wilmette Temple is in a 1% Black area. I found out last year during the voting, the demographics of my area are 48% Black, 46% Hispanic, and I think it's 6% white.
Wow.
I'm so excited to be here, and it's motivating me to work even harder towards teaching the faith.
Yeah.
But I work out of my home, and my home is my little cave, and COVID didn't help. But the patio out in my front yard has become a wonderful place for me to meet a 15-year-old Black youth. And I met his mother today and had a glorious conversation. He wants to learn how to play board games, and I will be teaching him. So everybody, be vulnerable like Van. Let's all start asking questions. If you're white, what are we doing that's offensive? What is it that I do that's offensive? One of the ladies said when a white woman flips her hair, that's a sign of superiority. Now, if I take my hair down, it's in my mouth. I'm always flipping it. It has nothing to do with how I feel about myself. But because in the South, when they had the white mansions and such, white women did that as a sign that they were offended by the person they were talking to, or that they were superior. And so Black women have been taught that. Now, how many of those of us white knew that when we flipped our hair, it was offensive? I make an effort not to flip it. I now tie my big fuzzy mop backwards. But let's learn those things.
Can we move on to Amos, if you don't mind? Amos?
Wow. First of all, let me thank you, Ajit, for the invitation. Let me thank Van for the wonderful presentation and singing. I was sharing with my wife what it would take for someone to just extemporaneously come and chat with us and sing to us. So thank you very much. This is a great opportunity. As I listen to Becky, so I was thinking about there's a phenomenon called a reality gap. So we that exists between all of us. My reality is different than your reality. One of the things that every now and again, I get an opportunity to engage a white person in a conversation. And I like to have a little fun as I do that, and I have a question, a standard question that I ask them. And the question is this. I asked them to tell me how being white has shaped their lives.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
There it goes. It's off.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So when I asked the question, for them to share with me how them being white has shaped who they are, almost always they don't understand the question, and I have to repeat it. So tell me how being a white person has shaped who you are and how you show up. And they never quite understand the question. And by comparison, if you ask a white person, a Black person, tell me how being Black has shaped your life and who you are today, you know, they'll tell you, hold my beer and let's get it. And they'll share with you very quickly and very easily, you know, how walking around a department store, they were followed. How, in my case, Van, my background is not unlike your own. Growing up in Georgia, my formative year was spent in Georgia, where I had to accompany my father around to the back of the building to be handed the food that we purchased. I too remember those signs on the water fountain. So obviously that's part of my reality. And it's shaped my thinking and who I am. If you've never had those experiences, you will probably find it a little difficult. I'm not suggesting that everybody should have my experiences, but what I am suggesting that if you were interested in knowing what my experiences were and how those experiences inform who I am, then I think we would begin the process of narrowing that reality gap. We don't have to agree with each other. We simply need to begin by recognizing that my life experiences are probably a little different than yours. I'm always amused, and some of the comedians made fun out of when the police stopped a white person and they begin to give him a lot of lip. And we all know instinctively that other than how you doing, officer, that's about the extent of our conversation. Otherwise, we risk being shot while being and killed while being Black. Now, my final comment is I too grew up in the Baptist church. I'm really disheartened by what I see, especially in the evangelical community. Becky was talking about learning about cultural differences. Today, we got the Southern governors are they're taking out books out of the schools about Martin Luther King. So Becky, how are these young people gonna learn, young white people, gonna learn about some of the challenges we face in this country when we've resolved? So I'm not as optimistic about, and I apologize, about our future. It appears as if we're regressing. And I think our church community plays a large part. Praise Christian nationalists.
Amos, we can't see you.
I'm sorry. I must have done something. So anyway, I'll just kind of, I'm sure I vented, but it appears as if our need to love one another, which I do not disagree with, begs to question of how do we do that?
Yep.
Sorry, Amos,
It's that's hard. That's hard. Yes.
could you repeat that original question that you talked about when you meet someone, what you
Yeah.
ask them?
How has being white shaped your life, who you are today? Now, I have a hypothesis that as a majority, it's not something that you need to be concerned about. We exist in your universe. So understanding the fact that, and I'll use Becky's word, privilege. And by the way, I always say you can never blame folks for acting in their own self-interest. It's kind of nature, isn't it? We all, to some degree, act in our own self-interest. Nobody's looking to give that up. And then I think some people are threatened by others for fear that they may have to, their privilege won't continue.
Giselle?
Thank you. I just wanted to add to talking with people. And I think a lot of us are aware of this, but there's a lot of stuff a lot of books out there, a lot of things being written about the Black experience at various stages, including contemporary life, and the stuff that really bothers people who are brown, who are African American. And so I think as Baha'is, we need to also, in addition to the Baha'i writings that we have for guidance that tell us to love one another, find out what that looks like in the secular world as well. And either read some of those books or have some white friends who have read those books that we can have conversations with as well. So, because there's a lot to learn. I have to say I've been, in the last few years, been doing research and working on something about Al-Baha, and I just, I have jaw-dropping moments all along the way. I mean, this is just history, but it also, not just history, it's history that lays a foundation or a groundwork for understanding, well, why are we here now? I like the whole concept of sundown towns, that people who are Black were not allowed in to that place, and the Great Migration, and how, what did that look like in the country? And even though, some of that may look like it's steps behind us, it's really the steps that are really right in front of us. Why is Wilmette only 1% Black? Well, it's because of those kinds of things and redlining and all of that. But there are a lot more things. And, around the time of George Floyd and the movement and such, that there were a lot of books that came out about, So You Want to Talk About Race is the title of one, which I found very good. Anyway, I'm just saying, I think we need more as Baha'is than to focus just on the Baha'i writings, which uplift us and certainly, particularly if we're reading Shoghi Effendi, they really tell us in detail some things, but also to explore these other resources that can help us be more sensitive to the situation in our country at this time. Okay, that's what I had to say.
Mhm. You know, Amos mentioned a hard piece, and that is, how do you love people that you don't know? And how do you try to do that? Now I can tell you experience here. I know people who are white who have read White Privilege and read a number of books, but they still have a subordinate, a subconscious sense of superiority. They still in a meeting will be the person that talks all the time. These will be white people, and so learning to practice doing it, I think, is probably, and you know, I don't have an answer. I don't know that any of us have an answer. We just know that things have got to change, and we can't just go. Those of you who are Baha'is who are fasting, maybe a strong prayer about how to get out of where I am now, how to how to listen more. There obviously things that all of us need to learn. As earlier, I was thinking about, it might have been Amos also speaking when you know, I found a couple of, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, it's something that still happens. I can be walking in a grocery store and I can have my hands in my pocket. And I don't generally walk with my hands in my pocket. But as I've become conscious of it, I try not to walk with my hands in my pocket. But I remember as a little boy, not even that little, being stopped at the cash register in a place and somebody said somebody saw me stealing something. And I wouldn't think I would carry that on into my adult life, but I obviously have. And we all carry on things that have started from way back. And we're just trying to figure it. You know, if we were perfect, there would be no reason for God to come to us and tell us, but we're not. So it's very, the writings of all of the messengers, very precise. We just haven't figured out how to do all that. And so when I show the man being lynched and you see his feet hanging there, you know, I have a picture I took at the DeSaab Museum, which is an African-American museum it's the oldest one in the country, and it's in Chicago. And they had an exhibit on, and there were Klan people, Klansmen. It was a man and a woman and a child. They all had on white robes with the pointed white hat. And they were standing where a person had been lynched. So they were there to watch the lynching. Now, let's put that in today's perspective when we talk about history. And you hear that white people do not want their children to be traumatized by reading real history. And real history has adults and children at lynchings. It was a show. And I don't know what my ancestors went through. I just know that I am lucky. We are lucky to be able to be on this side now. And yet there's so much work to do. So much work to do. So we're hoping that when we have sessions like this, we want to leave. Can I change something I'm doing? Because obviously we all have something to change. Is. But I'm finding things I need to change. And I'm beginning to catch myself. And I think what I'm catching myself doing is only the tip of the iceberg. Because it's so ingrained. Let me share with you this last little piece. In the past year and a half, I found my father's mother was married to a white man, but my grandfather was white. And I'm less than a year getting ready to turn 80. Less than a year. And I'm just finding out my grandfather is a white man. That's the kind of secrets that are embedded in the Black community and the white community of America. If you're not originally from America, you really had any of that stuff happening. I won't be any relative of yours. People. Because of racism in America. I don't know how my hand got up. I sure didn't raise it. So, friends, are there any? Well, while you're thinking, I was at a summer school in Fort Valley, Georgia, and those of you who are Baha'i and who've been Baha'i for a while might know Hand of the Cause Zakrullah Kadem. He was the main speaker at that summer school, and he said, Baha'u'llah said these words: soon will all be enlisted under these banners. And when after he said that, he said, Ya Baha'u'llah. And he then said, I wish somebody would put that to music. And I went back home and I put it to music. Soon will all that dwell on earth be enlisted under these banners. Soon on earth be enlisted under these banners. Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah. Well, Yah Baha'u'llah, O thou, the glory of the most glorious. We promised we all are gonna be as one. So how many more generations are we gonna let go before that happens? Can we begin to see some of that now? That would be the question I would leave with you. What can I do to help this happen? And it's got to be something more than whatever I'm doing right now. And I'm saying I'm doing right now because I keep thinking I got to do something more. I have to talk to you from my heart if I can. I'm going to have to share things I wouldn't normally have shared just a few years ago. But as we begin to understand history that some people don't want us to know, history of America that some people don't want to know, it'll come. This oneness will come. There's a co-worker I have, Haruna Kita, and he sent me a little video. He's from Africa. He's from Liberia. And you know something I never thought about. He said the people in Liberia are beginning to think about the ancestors they lost.
Where do you want him there?
The ancestors they lost
Martha?
to America. I never thought about people in Africa thinking about all the millions of people stolen from Africa and brought to America. You know, here we've been talking about our ancestors. Our ancestors were dragged here, tied down in head to foot in boats, in the bottom of boats. Many died. My ancestors. And he just showed me now in Liberia, they're beginning to be concerned that when they see an American Black person come back to Liberia, that they could be relatives. So this history is a history that we all have to know, whether you were born here or not. We all have to know it, because if you weren't born here and you look like you're white, you're going to learn what white people do. You won't get it from us. You're going to learn it from white people. So you may not even think you're prejudiced, and you've learned it. Milton, come on down.
Yes.
Man, you said something. And that you was in Fort Valley, Georgia.
Yes.
That was in 67.
Yes.
And that was when I was working at that camp at
What?
Fort Valley, Georgia. I was the lifeguard there. And
Oh, God.
when those, one thing you didn't mention, that was the National Farmers Camp, which was the Negro camp. And you had the Future Farmers Camp. But white people didn't come to the Black camp. And that was the first time I saw anything like that. People from all races, nationalities come together. It was, I'm growing up in Macon, Georgia. I said, this is not happening. Making sure I had to call my mother. I said, you better come down here and see this, because you may not get this opportunity
Oh, my
ever
Lord.
again. But that was that's when I ran into the Baha'is the first time. Fort Valley, Georgia.
I always thought
know,
you were always thought you were a dentist, Milton. I didn't realize you were a lifeguard too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that just further shows how deep our history is.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
There were times that some of us not a friend,
Mhm.
not somebody we know.
Mm.
We couldn't know them.
Right.
Burton,
Thanks, Van. I just wanted to say, because you started to talk about history, I don't know whether or not you've been, just a second. You've been breaking up at pieces, and I wanted to show you a slide that my mother took a picture of, and it was Elsie Austin at New Helen. Now, if I remember correctly, Ajit, Elsie Austin left this world in Texas.
mm-hmm.
And she's buried there. She's interred there. And I wanted to show Van this picture that my mother took back in 1950 of a young Elsie Austin, because if Elsie Austin doesn't exist, then I don't exist. And if, Liz Grogan doesn't exist, then I don't exist. And I've made a study of history, particularly of our family, particularly that's being a product of an interracial marriage, that was very frowned upon, not just by the Bahais, but most of society in the 1950s. So I don't know, Ajit, can I share my screen for a second? Because I've got it right up, it says here, what you got, to what Elsie Austin said a quarter of a century ago that seems so profoundly prescient to what we have now, okay? So this is the document. So Elsie Austin said this in 1998. She said, "We are making a serious effort to pry human beings away from their alienating conditions, their comfortable ignorance, and their prejudice, but we must try harder. After all, the battle we face is essentially a spiritual battle to transform the souls and spirits of human beings, to empower them to express love and justice and develop a unity of conscience." Now, Dan has shared this story with me about what Elsie Austin said to him after the World Congress. He said specifically that Elsie Austin had come up to him and said, "I never thought that gospel music would be accepted into the Baha'i realm. I never thought that that was going to be part of Baha'i experience. And now," it says, "I can die now." But she wound up living another decade or so. But she said that quotation in a meeting overseas and then came back and spoke in America about it. I didn't realize the connection that Elsie Austin had with my mother until I got all of this information and started looking into the background of, why would this white woman from privilege have been marrying this black man who was extremely intelligent, extremely athletic? What would ever pull them together to decide that they would wind up becoming members of this new religion, to the point of where they would even wed? And as I've shown some people who've known my story, is that they came to the dedication of the house of worship in 1953, and there's a really nice photo of the two of them, but it was told to my mother that she couldn't have children. And that was before she had 4 children by this person of African descent. So with regard to knowing your history and your background, I also found out through my research is that my mother, the patriarch of her family, actually was an indigenous man. And in fact, it was Nipmuc, which was central Massachusetts. It said Indian. So there's a serious, idea to learn your own history. And the difficult part is, as you can see, by all of these people in the South, they wish to whitewash history. And for those of you, I'm going to give you this one little historical nugget. Malcolm X was in Lansing, and Malcolm X and I shared the same barber when I had hair. Just to let you know that Malcolm and my dad knew each other when Malcolm was a desperado, and my dad was this young person of African descent who had married an African American woman who owned a flower shop. So the most thing about history is what former President Truman said, is the history that we don't know. And so everybody needs to tell their own story and research their own history, whether or not it was Baha'i related history or whether or not it's history of Derek. But I found out who I was with regard to traveling to Ghana,
Yes.
where there were much of people that were of African descent. So it's a very, very convoluted history that some people have. And I can still remember then, talking about discovering his own familiar history and how difficult that is. So remember, it may not be pretty, but it is something that we all should at least always look for. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Ajit, I'm back to you.
Couple of things. First, I bring you a message, Van, from Jack McCants. He said he's really sorry he couldn't make it. He's not feeling well at all.
Oh my.
He fell down from his chair and he thinks he's broken a rib and he's got a big lump on his head. Well, when you're 93, 94, things like that tend to happen. So he apologized. He said he was in too much pain to show up. He really wanted to, but he wanted me to give you his regards.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I want you guys to get to know Amos Benning. Amos and I worked for many years together at Xerox. And Amos had the best way of bringing people together. He would invite you to his home and feed you till you had so much food to eat till you couldn't move. And then you were friends forever.
Yeah, Ajit, I think you said 20 years. It's more than 25 years now.
Yeah. And Amos and I and Amos's wife, Michelle, we had been friends, fast friends, almost brothers for years. And I appreciate you coming out or joining us, Amos.
Well, I appreciate being invited. The thing that I've always appreciated about Ajit is, and I don't mean to swell your head, but he is the most a genuine person I've met. He's a person of immense integrity, and what you see is what you get. And he was someone who I knew almost instantly I could trust. And so I can't say enough good things about him. And he's like most families, we had our ups and downs, but he's always been here with us for both the ups and the downs. So gee, thank you. And Van, thank you so much for enlightening us this evening. I'm walking away from this evening when I got on this call, and that's what life is all about. We got to go to bed knowing more than we did when we woke up this morning.
That's it. Thank you, Amos.
Lastly, Van began the call by talking about love, and I was reminded of a scripture. I believe it was Luke 6 or 7. That we're called to love our enemies, and so no matter what, we have to love each other anyway. And so that's the way we started, and that's the way we're called to love even our enemies. And that's admittedly very, very tough. But what are our alternatives?
Of all these, faith, hope, and love is the best. That's what His Holiness Jesus tells us. Love is the greatest. I want to tell you that our speaker for April is a lady named Linda Cavillin Hopoff. For those of you that don't know, Linda Cavillin's father was a member of the First House of Justice, Mr. Bora Cavillin. So I hope all of you will join in. All of you will come back again. And there are not enough words to thank Van Gilmer for his amazing, great presentation. Delighted I could get to hear you. I have heard you sing, but this is the first time I've heard you talk. Except, so it was great to have you be here and John. What a great, wonderful talk. I think we are all touched and moved by what you had to say, and hopefully we will take the lessons moving forward from here. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Good night.
so much,
Thank
Ajit,
you.
for
Thank you so
inviting me.
much, Ajit. Take
Good
care.
night.
Thank you for
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good
Thank
night.
you all.
Night.
Good night. Thank
Good
you all.
night.
Our family. Thank you, Van. Thank you, Ajit. Thank
Oh,
you,
thank
Amos.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All
Love
right.
you.
Thank you, thank you,
everybody.
thank you.
How does one get on the list for these meetings?
I'm sorry?
How would one, you're saying that there's another one. I received the link